Welcome to another episode of the I Will Aim podcast. The topic for today is the 1.5 million truth why belonging is the leadership advantage you can't ignore. What if the most overlooked leadership skills isn't strategy, execution, or even communication, but belonging? In a world obsessed with compensation, titles, and performance metric, today my guest, Paul Howry, will argue that leaders fail to create belonging are leaving millions in value on the table. And more importantly, losing their people. This conversation will change how you think about leadership, culture, and what truly drives performance in today's workplace. Welcome. Welcome, Paul. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm fantastic. I've had a good walk with the dog, got my neurobiology and good kicking stuff with oxytocin, serotonin. Went stopped by a couple of my favorite businesses, and now I'm finding myself super happy to be here with you.
Looking forward to our conversation. How about if we kick it off with a quick introduction?
Alrighty. Hey there to the audience out there. My name is Paul Howery, and let's see. I guess you could call me like a belonging Sherpa. And what I do is I guide founders and leaders to create their belonging, or sometimes even find their belonging, so that it can actually kick their neurobiology into much higher performance. And it's the only time we get access to it is when we're in actual good relational belonging, and it makes basically high performance inevitable. Now, if you have you want to know the sciencey kind of bent of it, I'm a performance coach who specializes in the belonging neurobiology and the neuroscience behind it, and how you can actually set that up so that you naturally function with higher abilities, especially in a teaming environment.
Wow, impressive. And I'm looking forward to discussions. So let's drill down a little bit. Your work centers around belonging and leadership. What experience or moments in your life that led you to this particular space? It's a very unique space.
Yes, and especially since let's see here. Often belonging is made frou-frou, kind of fluffy and fuzzy and so on, when it's actually just it's hard science for the way we are. And I mean from an anthropological, social and behavioral science standpoint and so on. And I'm going to say that from a professional standpoint, when I was becoming a teacher, I was in at Seattle Pacific University, and I was doing an internship, a teaching internship at McClure Middle School here. It's a junior high school, I guess, for depending how old you are. And I went into a classroom, and it was terrible. Every kid was there at a rigid thing. If your desk was taken off a spot on the floor, you got a demerit. So everything was transactional. And the thing with our brain is it desires to be in good belonging first. So, I'll throw it this way. We're not thinking beings that feel or feeling beings that think. We're technically belonging beings that feel and then think. That's the neurobiology that kicks in. It's kind of a like a little mind goofiness, but it really is how the brain does its processing. So I go into this classroom and I'm observing this. I'm going, this is terrible. There's no way these kids can learn because all they're focused on is not getting in trouble. And just that's it. And I remember I went to Ruth Hansen, who was the dean of my program, and I got all pissy with her. I says, "Why did you pair me up with something like this? I mean, like, how am I supposed to learn from this?" And she goes, "Well, are you learning what not to do?" And I was like, "Oh, damn it." I go, "Yes." She goes, "Well, then you are learning." And I'm just like, just groaning. And I remember saying, maybe there's a reason we put you with that teacher. And I ended up, of course, having to reframe. And of course, I'm a young college student. But one of the things, and by the way, I'm actually like putting this 1 plus 1 together later on as I taught high school. After I had a company and I actually worked at Seattle Pacific University in their maintenance department, also, I did my grad work. But in my first year of teaching, I ended up in another aha. Well, the first aha was, Paul, quit being a whiny jerk. I still love Ruth Hansen to this day. But so I'm in the first week, and I went to SPU, and we had lesson plans galore. Like you got grilled on the technical abilities of being a teacher. I mean, it was the space to become a teacher that you could teach anywhere in the U.S. with the credentials. And I remember sitting there. I'd planned out the whole lesson plans, all the reduction of the learnings, broken down, different activities, different learning styles. I mean, that's what you did. And I remember sitting there with my students in the first week going, wait a minute, I could be average in all these lesson plans. And if my students know that I loved them and that I was theirs and they were mine, they would find a way to learn. And I hadn't really thought about it, but probably the seed for that was actually me winding out my dean in the School of Education and being placed in a position where I could create just that environment, because the kids did learn and were so much better because I was that presence in the room during my internship first round. But when I was teaching high school, I shifted that and said, these lesson plans, that's not what's creating the successful learning. That's not what's creating a space where the students will belong so good, be so secure in their belonging. And I'm making a differentiation. I'm not saying safe in belonging. It's secure in belonging. Safe is the wrong word, period. That security and belonging allows them to go towards the risk for each other and not wait to be safe. And I really make that demarcation because there's a lot of talk about psychological safety, and that's the pinnacle. Absolutely not the pinnacle.
Yeah.
So in my professional development, that led me to going into this modeling of it, and then later on finding out that the neuroscience actually backed it, because I don't want to spread something around that's really dumb and stupid. I want it to actually be backable. And so I think that's probably the beginning of it. And then, so I taught high school for 3 years. And then my buddy had a tech company and he said, hey, I need someone to come run this department. And it was the IT department. And I had these concepts about how you create space where people go towards each other and for each other, even in the conflict. And I took that and applied that into the business world as an IT director for 14 years and then as head of people for 3. So that's kind of like the short version of this track.
So I want to go back a little bit to when you were a teacher. You talk about if I make the student know that I love and care for them and they establish their belonging, that they would learn better. So
Absolutely.
how did you do that? How did you exactly implemented that?
So this has to, okay, back to the neurobiology of belonging and how things actually work for us. So one of the aspects, we define belonging wrong. We define it as you get to be accepted, included, have an identity, and be authentic. That's Cornell University. There's even some aspects of the APA, and I'm not trying to bash them, but technically those are all just affirmation, because
Yes.
you can have all 4 of those and not belong.
Yes.
And so belonging is a relational space. It's not a transactional space. And so in the space of creating a classroom, so they came into the classroom, what they knew, and I use a model where it's about feeling, owning, and caring for somebody in their successes, dreams, and failures. And they do the same thing for you. Now, the kicker is somebody has to go first. And if you're the teacher and it's your classroom, I had to resist, I almost swore. You have to go effing first, period. But you have to do that. And I will say, in feel, own, care, and I'll qualify this. Feel is psychosocial terms, empathy. You have to feel for them because our brains are wired to pick up when somebody actually feels for us. It's not this quid pro quo thing. The quid pro quo means it's transactional, and the brain picks up transactional and knows, all right, what do you want? And that's just how the brain functions. Own, you feel you own them. Now, own is not in possession or anything like that. It's you take the personal accountability for them because they're yours. And that comes through in language, it comes through in presence, all these aspects. And the last part is care for, not care as in I feel the care for you. It's I do the care for you. So when you do those 3 things and you do them in the context for the students of in their successes, in their dreams, and in their failures, because guess what a classroom is? It is all of that.
Yeah.
So by demonstrating that, where I would show up, I would greet every student with a high five and whatever else, maybe some kind of joke, maybe checking in with them because they showed up with a grumble face. And it's like, She come into from a bad situation in the prior class because it was teaching high school, so they had 5 other classes. And I'd go, "What's going on? You all right? You good for class, or do you want to chat?" So what I did is I offered a vulnerable space for them to come and talk. Now it would take early in the beginning of the year. I'm like going, wait a minute, I'm in the first week. If they know they're mine and I am theirs, well, how do you know that someone is emotionally yours? You have to show them. Now they have to choose back. And I can tell you how this worked. And this was awesome. So, in the process of doing this, especially in rigid performance for the first 3 weeks, the students knew the values of the classroom. They knew what it meant to be each other's in the classroom because I would explain it and I would talk about it and I would invite them into it. I wouldn't coerce them into it. I would invite them. So I had this one student and he totally got all bent out of shape. And he was being a jerk because he had a terrible moment in prior class. Before I could even walk up to him and just kind of catch up, go, "Hey man, what's going down? We're not, this isn't our thing. Not it." And I would go, "Not in our classroom."
Yeah.
And before I could even get to his desk, 3 other students went and said, "Hey, blank, what's going on? That's not how we do things here. Come on back."
Wow.
And they called him back.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah. And so,
It's one thing that you do that for them. It's another that everyone step up and do that for one another.
yeah. So there's a structure in place. And this is how you scale the influence of one teacher. By the way, this translated exactly in the business space too. And this is how you scale influence. It's a lean model for influence, which is I'm the one teacher. And in the first 3 weeks, I figured out who were my evangelizers for the values of the classroom, how they would be lived in belonging in the classroom, towards the core purpose of the classroom is everybody gets to learn better and get a much better paying job when they graduate for high school. Literally, this is how I structured it. So in that process, now they know these 5, and I said, okay, I'm asking for you if you would be willing to do this. And that is, you always invite people back into the values of our classroom. You're going to basically walk in, ask somebody, hey, if something's out of whack, say, what's up, get curious, and then invite them back into the value that's probably being violated. And I had three values I ran them by. So from that standpoint, I had these 5 people. I said, but now here's the criterion. You will not do any of the discipline, nor will you be the harsh person in this situation. I said, that's my role. I want to know if you're willing to do this. If you are, great. If you're not, I'm going to find somebody else in the classroom and it was really amazing because I don't think I remember having anybody turn down the option. So what that meant now is there were always going to be great people. They're bought in. They love the system. They're excited about it. They're not going to be perfect. Nobody is. And then you've got your other side. Then we call them the naysayers, or we actually gave labels to it too, so people could have common language. It was basically you were an optimizer or a sub-optimizer. And it's okay. And I said, it's okay to be in the middle, but create the better space for the class. And so by doing this, the evangelizers would actually pull people into the good spaces. I played the hard ass when it was needed and dealt with the sub-optimizers. Now the sub-optimizers fell into two versions: oppositional, actual, and those that basically were just broken down and kind of hapless, hopeless because whatever's happened in their life, they've just kind of given up on going forward. What had ended up happening over the long haul is they would get pulled over because there was always the re-inviting by the evangelizers to come in. The middle of the classroom gravitated towards, of course, what you reward, which I rewarded was people taking care of each other in the classroom. And the sub-optimizers, they would actually start drifting in that way also because why? They were just very passionate about whatever they dealt with and whatever they had gone through. And I worked in a really rough area of the Seattle area. It's called White Center. And my classrooms would end up managing themselves. Actually, that earlier explanation, how they got to that was they got used to caring for each other in a way that they would shepherd each other towards the higher performing relational space.
Wow. In many ways, when I'm listening to you, it's like you taught them empathy.
Absolutely. That's feel. That is the feels all the
You
way.
taught them empathy, and empathy creates that space for people to care about other people, show they truly care, and bring them into the circle. It's like
Absolutely.
imagine belonging. Like as we were talking about, imagine belonging is a circle, right?
I define it as belonging circles. So it's funny because I have a scaling model which
Yeah.
that is the reference. It is belonging circle.
And then some people, when you started, some people that the evangelists are in the circle already. They're playing in the circle, and there's still some people on the peripheral of the circle, kind of hovering, watching like what's going on, what are they doing, like. And then
Mm,
there are people who are further out, like the naysayer, the sub
yep.
optimizer, right? And
Yeah.
then because the evangelists are doing really great in owning and then showing
Absolutely.
empathy and bringing people together, then now they, like I said, they become self-organized.
Okay, so this is the thing that people miss. So when I becomes our,
Yeah. Or
and
we.
I'm using I'm using that instead of we
Okay.
because we is a we. Our is an ownership,
True, true, true.
and
I,
so
I didn't think of it that way.
yeah, so it's so then this is the funny part of this aspect. When somebody would come into me and into my classroom, I says, "No, that's my student. We do this for each other here, and therefore, I'm asking that you will do this for them." If, say, may have had to do a referral, somebody in the office. I said, this is my student, and here's where I want to proceed. I want to give that student a chance to get back into the tribal space, and that makes a huge difference. And so that's why I used the. By the way, so I love. By the way, I love you brought in the circles, and think of the circles as overlapping Venn 3D Venn diagrams
Yeah, yeah,
because you'll have a big circle maybe if that's how you set your company space
yeah.
even, and then you'll have an overlapping circle, and that overlap is where you start pulling people from either the middle into the evangelizing or even the naysayers into that other spot. And it is amazing how well it works because they take ownership. They become, this is my classroom, and then that moves into our when they
Our
talk
word
together. And what's that saying? Everybody's favorite radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me?
for me. with
And of course, we need that to turn into what's in it for we.
Okay.
But it was totally that space. It's and so this is really fun. I'll ask people, how would you introduce this person that you've known for 30 years and we just met and you're introducing them to me? What would you say? And they are always like, this is my friend
Mm-hmm.
name. And
Yeah.
I go, what's the operative word? And this is what gets missed. They don't say my,
My.
they say friend.
My was automatically the operative word for me.
Yeah, right, right. But that's the operative word. It's not friend, it's not
Yeah.
wife, it's not, husband, spouse, or
It's
whatever.
the relationship.
It's the relationship because you take ownership of that relationship. When that happens, man, it's huge. And there's a dynamic, and this is in the workplace or school. And what most people miss also, they think belonging is one to many. It ain't one to many. So it's because when you do that, you now are going everything from one direction has to map one to one to everybody
It's
else.
like a spoke.
Yeah, but it doesn't.
No.
What it does
It's
is
one
it's
to
one
one.
to one in the context of many.
Yeah.
When you start understanding that, now you figure out why pockets of belonging move and have a very strong dynamic and others may not. And if you treat them all as one to one, you won't be able to tailor and help adjust one as a leader in the space, whether you're a teacher in a classroom or whether you're running an IT group or a head of operations. That comes from your ability to see which teams and how the interrelationship of the mapping from them turns out.
So let's pivot a little bit to corporate, or when management always talk about engagement, and the term engagement's been thrown around all over the place, but we want to shift that to belonging. So how, if someone listening out there is now thinking about it because of all this, the way you explain it, and it's kind of hit home to them, how do they shift engagement to belonging?
Okay. When you have to stop using engagement as the measurement.
Very good.
Reason being, measure what matters. We all know the book.
Yeah.
So the technical problem with measuring engagement is it's a lag measure.
Yeah.
And for if the audience doesn't understand, a lag measure is a post effect. Now, if I say I'm weighing myself on a scale, that's a lag measure. I have to measure the things that would actually move the needle. How many times I exercised, how many calories I'm choosing to eat per day, any number of things. If maybe I'm trying to bulk up for a thing, that means, oh, I didn't eat 5,000 calories today. I'm measuring the wrong thing. So you have to measure basically lead measures. But the whole point is, okay, why do I even care? I'm supposed to measure engagement. It's what's been talked about for the last 15 years. Gallup, I think, just released the state of the engagement, which hasn't moved in 15 years. Did that just come? I think that just
We wonder why.
Yeah, we wonder why. Because it's not measuring what actually changes the game. And this is what is interesting. Was recently released by in 2022 through, I guess, current, by Indeed in the Workplace Wellbeing Study. And it's about well-being, yes, but performance is intrinsically tied to well-being. And so the number one driver that they found it's over 26 million submissions now, was belonging, or I should say is belonging. Now, if you look at their definition of belonging, it's also a relational model, not the static one, you get to have a feel this and so on. Active in the mutual choice people will have for each other. So you have to set how you measure that. And the truth is, you have to go, and I'm going to use the feel, own, care aspect. And you have to mark on a paper, how many times in a day you did feel, own, care for somebody. Maybe it's one of the three.
Feel, own, care.
Yeah, because that's what your brain decodes. Is it okay to go on a tangent for that decoding?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, because in order to understand how to measure it, I kind of feel like the decoding needs to make sense. So if we meet and say you and I are going somewhere and I introduce you as a friend Will instead of my friend Will,
Yeah.
you're going to go, what do you mean a friend?
Yeah. A friend. Yeah.
And we've only known each other a short time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're going to go, because your brain is decoding that, saying the signal is wrong. I'm not yours.
Yeah. We're not friends.
Same thing. If I show up with flat affect, or say I showed up to this talk with flat affect, you'd be like, what the hell's going on with this guy? Because your brain would be going, yeah, this isn't working. Or worse still, I showed up late or didn't show up at all. The actions that I would take in caring would be devoid. We all have friends like that. And like right now, people are, and if you go like this and I say you're friends, so you're all going, hey, wait a minute. That friend drives me crazy. And it's because one of those things is missing and it's supposed to be there. And that's the decoding of the brain. So I will say a simple approach is to literally tally. If you have to do it on a pencil and paper, I'm going into a meeting. I'm going to make sure that I show feeling 3 times. I'm going to make sure that in my talk, I'm not saying, for example, an employee. I'm going to use the language of our employee, my employee. Hey, that's your employee. Anything that creates the actual space of the accountable ownership for somebody else. And I'm going to ask the questions, or I'm going to praise somebody. Way to step up and help your teammate. I'm not going to say a teammate. I'm going to say your teammate.
Yeah.
This language shift changes the story. Now somebody starts saying in their own mind, my, our, us, and we end up developing a belonging, or one of my favorite authors. Yeah, us story. It's a new narrative. Identitive narrative is identitive narrative, right? Narrative identity. So yeah, it's just so you can do those things. Now the signals we send that we can also keep track of. Very simple. If somebody shows up and they're down, connect with their down. Man, rough morning? Not, oh, don't worry about having a bad morning. Let's have a good one. And then you're like, put the ice pick in my ear. No, show up where they are and make contact. Get genuine about it. Now, you can do that with happy. You can do it with sad. You can do it with just a question of having somebody's back. Who's got your back in this? And it's like, they're like, I feel like nobody does right now. I got your back. So these are all the signals that the brain. I have an article which actually talks about 8 signals. Having joy for someone. Something like, your kid did what? High fives! Give it to me! because now you're addressing the whole human in the space, but you're inviting them to be wholly human in belonging by doing that. So if you look at these things and do them as lead measures, as actions you have to take, you will start moving people into relational belonging.
Wow. So powerful. And I love the fact that you talk about meeting them in their space. So you're having a bad day. Like, it's funny when you say, yeah, have a good day. Like, I remember seeing people say things like that, but like, that doesn't work. The
Yeah.
person's having a crummy day.
Well,
But,
right. Yeah.
but it's
That's when
amazing.
depth
Like,
and positivity becomes toxic or whatever.
yeah, yeah. That's when it shift. Like, it shift the gear immediately. And the person, like, they're not even responding to you at all.
Actually, so that's a violation of, you're not giving them the feels. It's no longer feel, own, care. You might even be doing own and care, but your feel is meh.
Gone. It's gone. You're trying to own and care in a wrong space.
You can't force it because our brains are, we have how many millions of years to develop, that the first and foremost thing we're setting up is, can I belong? And then, how do I belong? And by decoding that, by setting that in place, it's like we live by these core values and our belonging gets defined by them. And do we feel, own, and care in accord with these core values? And are we doing it for this core purpose? When you do that, you end up with company tribe. Not in tribe as in the primitive way that people talk about it. Now, this is neurobiology, like first people's incredible performance and survival in the wilderness for thousands and thousands of years together. This is just a remarkable way the brain sets us up to be and create a space of love and belonging in the most hostile and difficult of spaces. And I talk about this with Navy SEALs every once in a while, because I've known some and some other spec ops. It really doesn't matter. My buddies just call me out. Why Navy SEALs? It's like, because people are used to hearing about them. But it could be
Yeah,
Delta, it could be,
yeah,
Rangers. But their power to be elite, you don't have them without belonging.
yes. They're like stick together.
Right. And so it's like their drive is so that they won't let each other down.
Yeah,
Wouldn't you love to have employees who are like, yeah, I'm learning more. I want to find a better way to do something because my teammate matters. And let's extend that teammate belonging, company belonging to, no, our customers aren't customers. They're our customers. Now we're extending that belonging that way. So now somebody's going to strive to more, because otherwise they're working only to provide for their family. And that
yes,
is ultimately going to create a conflict between what work is demanding of them and for them to be in their actual belonging. So if you create belonging in the workplace, now you get stacked belonging, because all the belonging in the workplace is also calculated for having the best family life for the members of the company tribe. And now the company tribe is bi-directional in going forth and creating an incredible stacked power instead of a divided space.
let's pivot to this wonderful book. I'm going on vacation this weekend, this Friday, Thursday night, and this one is my reading material. It's already in my backpack, and I took it out because I want to show it. So let's talk a bit about your book, right? So if there's three things you want them to walk away with and implement.
Okay. First and foremost, the context of the book and why I even wrote it. By the way, belong and perform. By the way, thank you so much for the little plug there. So first and foremost, this came out of me listening to a founder, a CEO, and a high-level executive, and they were talking about it, and they were bemoaning the fact that after 6 months, they each lost what they thought was just a great employee. And I made a comment of like, well, they left before you even hired them because you didn't create and show them and invite them into a space of belonging. And they're like, what? And I says, oh yeah, we belong or we leave. It's that simple. I mean, it's like so when they signed the paperwork to work for you, they'd already signed their own escape clause. If they belonged and said, that's my company, that's the company I want to work for. If you had that presence in space, well, they'd still be there. It's
Powerful.
that simple. Now what? So that led to me. It's like, I'm going to bust this book out. I'm going to make it shorter and much more readable. That's my goal anyway. For somebody who is a busy founder, executive in a smaller startup. It can be for a team in a company too. I have somebody using it right now to revamp their performance management system. And I was like, oh, I love what you're doing with this because this is all about performance.
Yeah.
You do not exceed your level of belonging in your performance. Period. It is the ultimate governor. And so, but what I'll go with the other things I want to get is when you have a place of just real belonging, this relational chem where people feel, own, and care for each other in the successes, dreams, and failures in the pursuit of the company's tribe. When you do that, they're healthier, massively healthier. They go home and they're better parents, better brothers and sisters, better children. They're better all the way around. That creates this cycle of better. Then they come back to work the next day after having better home, bring that betterness into the work, and it becomes a flywheel. And if there's one thing I've experienced, whether it was in working in maintenance with Seattle Pacific University during my graduate work, there was a brotherhood, sisterhood of people that just, they fought for each other. They didn't wait for things to be safe. And this is one of the things that transforms. When we're in this default state of we belong, I choose you, you choose me, you're mine, I'm yours, just like my students. Now we're willing to go towards the risk because that's because fear of moved into fear for.
Yeah.
And there's nothing more powerful. And for me, it would be for Jones over here on the floor behind me, of running towards the danger for them, as opposed to going, I'm not sure if it's safe enough. I'm not gonna say anything. And I think about this with, people who have children. There's nothing that will stop you when your child, that is your core belonging at risk.
Yeah.
And there's a power involved in that. And then when somebody asks, why did you do that? You automatically say, not what, and there's no why, it's who. It's because they were yours. Same thing with somebody got on one of my students and it was there. They were like, yeah, that student's blah. I said, no, you don't get to talk about my student that way. You didn't come from a crappy classroom where you were basically crapped on by another teacher. No. And I remember a student going, thanks for standing up for me, Mr. Howery.
Wow.
So
That is powerful.
I want people to go and be in a place where they love and belong. And do you want one more little health nugget on this?
Yep, absolutely.
Because I know we're getting close on time. I want to stay in the time. So we have the two neurochemicals. We didn't get into this, but that get released in belonging. They activate are your oxytocin system and your serotonin. They're literally your belonging infrastructure. This changes. When you belong, you get these two chemicals. They become I call it Team OS. It's kind of corny, but it's Team Operating System and Team Oxytocin and Serotonin. When you have those chemicals, you have such heightened abilities in relationship and perception and the ability to avoid mistakes and to learn so much quicker. Why doesn't every company want this? Because hello, sounds great because it's true. It's how the system works. But there's an added bonus. Our hearts have oxytocin receptors. And you think, well, yes, because also now there's a heart neurobiology and there's also a gut neurobiology, but your heart, but there's an internal focus that comes with this. When your heart gets oxytocin, get it in belonging. Belonging is free, by the way. It activates the heart stem cells to rebuild from the inside faster than the performance might be breaking the heart down. So when you do that, you change the health coding in your heart to rebuild faster under the load. And by the way, the load can have pressure, but because you're in belonging, your neurobiology isn't letting you degrade. It's just the coolest thing. And that sets you up to perform better the next day and the next day and the next day.
Wow, so impressive. If my audience listening out there wants to reach out to you and work with you, what's the best way to reach out to Paul?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I don't know if you're going to have links or anything like that, but if you do have them on there, my LinkedIn, my website, Heart Based Leading. I will take your calls. If you're in West Seattle, by chance, every Wednesday I show up at the Hydrant, which is a coffee, beer, wine bar with my dog, and we do belonging discussions for how to perform better and have greater belonging.
Well, thank you, Paul. And I want to plug this book again. Please buy this book and read the book and reach out to Paul and let Paul knows about it. I'm going to be reading this book on my vacation, on my flight, and I'm looking forward to improve my belonging ability.
Uh,
Thank you, Paul, for your time. I really appreciate it. You've been an awesome guest and looking forward to connecting with you beyond the podcast.
oh, I'm sure we will. I'll call it ahead. I love connection right out of the gate meeting you.
Thank you. Take care.